notes, and I'll forward it to you as well.
Great.
Okay, so you can see kind of our steps here, right? From
Yep.
1 to 8 on the master list. So here's your first assignment. So there's some articles in here you're going to read.
Okay.
But here, when I talk about most people of when you want to get a job, you start with, well, what do you want to be doing?
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And so the biggest thing is to figure out what your strengths and what you don't want to do, because early on in your career, you actually probably haven't done enough to understand what you want to do, but you are starting to fill the pocket of what you don't want to do. So what I tell most people is like what are the things you found so far, even from our notes or our last discussion, you said you didn't want to do?
What are some things that I don't want to do, you mean?
Yep.
Do you mean like specific tasks, or are you talking about just job like
Both.
both?
All.
Okay. Well, I don't want to. I know for a fact that I don't want to be. What's the opposite of micromanaged? Like, I don't want to be just thrown out there on my own.
Oh, yeah, thrown in the deep end.
Yeah, I don't want to be. I really, really, really don't thrive when I'm thrown into the deep end with no structure, management, or accountability.
Yep.
I know that for a fact. Let's see, what else? I don't want to work in an environment, like an office environment, where people aren't excited about their job. As weird as that is, I had a job where it was like people that weren't necessarily wanting to improve. They just were comfortable going to work and doing what they were told to do and not really getting outside their box. And it was
Yep.
pretty boring,
Yep.
I think that's what I don't want to work in an environment like that.
That makes sense. So the state, you should avoid working for the state. That makes sense.
I don't want to work for the DMV or the post office.
Yep. So no DMV or post office. I like that.
Let's see what else. I think another thing that I don't want to do is that's a good question. What do I not want to do?
And if you know what more you want to try, like I would call it, what do you want to go try, not what do you want to do for the rest of your career?
Got it.
Right?
I did. Yeah, I thought of another thing. I don't want to be forced to give up my integrity. I'd like for a sale or to protect the company. So I don't want. I want to work in a very high integrity, upstanding company that's prides themselves on. Even if the sale is not for that person, it's not for that person,
Yep.
Or if we messed up, then we'll take accountability for it. We're not going to lie and make an excuse.
Yep.
I don't know how often that even happens, but I worked for a company that did that a lot. So
no MLMs.
Yeah. What's MLM mean?
Multi-level marketing.
Multi-level marketing. Okay.
So yeah. Hey, if you can get 5 friends, you can become a millionaire, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, those are popular here.
Okay. Yeah, we're like the mecca for it. So it's usually good to identify that you don't want to go work for one. Okay. So then we talk about, okay, what do I want to do? Where do I want to work? And so the thing that I tell most people early on in their career is the logo only matters if you're going for Amazon, Google, Facebook. Like the logo really matters when it's big. When otherwise, it doesn't matter as much. You want to be at a good company. So you want one that isn't necessarily that has the perfect title or the perfect job, because some people are like, well, if you could be a VP of marketing, well, I'm like, well, what about a VP of marketing of an MLM that steals from people? Like, do you really want that title? They're like, no, I don't want that title. I'm like, okay, you care more about the company you're working for. Um, that's one of the things you'll see in our philosophical approach is how do you identify if something's a good company and it's a good one to work for. Glassdoor is a good resource, internal interviews of other people, but ultimately the person you report to, if they have integrity and lead with integrity and do a good job and you can trust the person that you report to, your experience at that company will be good. So a good company is helpful that's growing and healthy with good executive leadership and a good manager. That's kind of the trifecta of what you want to do.
Yeah.
So we start defining where you want to work. So what do you want to do based on what you not want to do? Then where do you want to work? Then we move to who do you know? So this is that whole term networking. But networking is not what you can get. Networking starts with how can I help?
Yeah.
So I just think of philosophically, people are like, well, what is having my LinkedIn? What is connecting with other people? Why am I trying to offer value? It's because I want to help other people more than I help myself. And so you reap what you sow. If Zig Ziglar, if you help enough people get what they want in their life, you'll get what you want in your life. That philosophy totally is how I think of networking. So there's 2 articles you'll read and we'll debrief about landing a job in 7 steps, which you'll realize I'm not that smart. I'm just stealing it. And then this help guide on good relationship networking, that networking is relationship. And so it's about learning and growing together. Once we move out of understanding the networking, because your network is how you get your interviews, not your resume.
Yeah.
So I always say you start with your network, then you move to your resume. Most people, when they start looking for a job, go, I need to work on my resume. I'm like, but what are you trying to do? And where do you want to work? And who do you know? Answer those questions first before you make a resume. Because what you want is what's called a results-oriented resume. So you're going to read this article of what it looks like. So this article talks about a results-oriented resume. The biggest thing that I tell people is if your resume says a bunch of generic stuff that looks like a job description, it's not good enough and it won't get you an interview and it doesn't look like a top performer. If you understand what you did and how it translated to a quantifiable output or a result, and you do that on every bullet point that there's a result that you achieved, that is a top performing resume. Yeah. So for instance, I'm like, hey, I'm a top performing leader that my team consistently promoted to multiple positions within the company. That's a pretty positive message to write. But if I go top performing leader with 48 people receiving 54 promotions in 3 years, that means I understand my data and my numbers. I can quantify the result. It grew within the company. And to know your number of how many people promoted under you as a leader, that is something that most other leaders can't bring to the table.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to start doing on your resume. But what resume do you build? I call it a long list resume. So you're going to start building bullets. And those bullets, you have an example of mine here. Don't go edit it. Make sure you make a copy of your own, right? And so what you do is you can see here's my 1 page. I always only turn in a 1 page, but here's some other stuff I did. Oh, here's some technology I understand. Here's some books I've read. Oh, here's companies I've consulted. And then I start going into old job experience with results and then some KPIs and data I can point to. Oh, here's other results. Here's other numbers I can pull from. And then over your career, you end up with this like 10-page document so that when you apply for a job, you can pull from previous experience and point to the result you got. So your resume is a living, breathing document that is long list, that is never 1 page. So this is what Nick's ended up being, and this will be yours. I'll make yours. This will be Drew's. You can see this guy I coached didn't apply at all. He went to school. He went back to school for something else, which I thought was, yeah. He greatest guy in the world. Love him to death. Applying this stuff, some people just don't he would like to think he's coachable. He's not coachable.
No.
He struggles with it.
How would you define like being coachable though? I mean, I just curious. Like, I mean, implementing like taking notes, implementing like.
Yeah. Also a brilliant question. So here's how I look at coachability. Not everyone's going to coach you, right? Like not everyone's gonna be your coach that you trust or whatever. But in this person was my direct employee that I hired. Plus, I've mentored him for a long time. I have given him advice on almost every facet of his life, and he's applied about 1% of it ever. So if you ask people feedback and never apply it, you're not coachable.
Yeah.
Because talking means nothing. Like it is one portion of action is 90% of the game. And so if coachable goes, well, I'm willing to try this to see if it works, and I'm going to follow through to learn and test. So to me, it's like you don't have to believe it as gospel, right? You're like, but the thing I always tell everyone is like, try it, apply it, see what you like or dislike about it, and let's have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
That's a coachable person. So if you're like in golf, if someone's like, hey, let's try further out putts and not chipping, but they never pull out their putter, that's not a coachable person, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. You could try it and you don't like it, then at least you
yes.
know that it's not working for you. You can pivot and do something else.
Or come back to them and go, here's what I did. And they're like, well, these are the 4 things I would do differently. Try it again. And then if you do that 2 or 3 iterances and it still doesn't work, that's where I'm like, that's a super coachable person. Yeah. Like, let's figure out something else. But people who like write off advice and go, I'm going to go my own path. And when I hear someone say I want structure, it's awesome. That usually is an indicator of coachability. However, if they disagree with the structure or the approach of the structure or don't apply the structure and inherently make it painful the whole way through, that's not a coachable heart. So I'm just big on that. Like tons of people I've met with, and I'm like, listen, if you're not going to apply this stuff, let's not even meet. Like go do your thing. Like, and I want you to go do your thing. Right. What would suck is if we met 5 times and you've done nothing. And I'm like, you're just wasting both our time. Like, I love you. You're awesome. But let's go have coffee. Let's not talk about your career. Yeah. So, and this approach has worked for 24 of 24 people, and 4 have abandoned it because they didn't want to do the work. So I don't think those 4 failed the process. I think they just never wanted to apply it because they're like, I just want to go get 3% pay raises a year. I'm like, all right, by the end of your career, you'll be worth $75K a year. And if you take this approach, you could do that in the next 4 years. Like, what do you want to do? And they're like, well, I don't know if I agree. I'm like, okay, you do your thing. I don't have to lean into this, and like, it's fine. I get it. It's not for everyone. So, great question though. Super good question.
Yeah. I just want to, I mean, I'm definitely going to do everything I can to make the most of our time. And, you know, I don't want to show up next week and have nothing like, you know, to say, oh, you know, I don't want to do that. So I just want to make sure.
Yeah, totally. No, it's good to ask that. So, so then you have your master resume. Well, how do you get the interview? The resume never gets you a job. The resume will be something you speak to in the interview. As you can see, the experience I just recently did, the story I want to tell you about, and we talk about the STAR method, which is situation, task, your action, your result. Yeah. So when you talk about what you do, hey, tell me about a time you failed. Well, the situation was that I was given not clarity on this massive project, no deadlines, no check-in for 3 months. The task at hand was we needed to achieve X. My action was I set up a weekly cadence with my boss to gather that feedback and work against it. And then we actually missed the deadline because the initial task wasn't clearly defined. The scope creep got so bad that we missed it. So we made an iteration and hit it within a month, which would have been 3 months ahead of schedule if we didn't do that approach. So I just talked about a failure, right? But I made it sound very positive. So that's the STAR method. Or so how do I get the interview? Okay, now I have an interview. What the heck do I do? How do I handle the interview? So you have 2 articles about interview prep. And then, well, what does follow up mean? Because it doesn't matter if you interview if you don't know how to follow up. So there's an
Right.
article about that. And then last is, how do you handle multiple job offers? So this is kind of like, this is your funnel, this is your process. What we will do assignment wise for you is kind of your first session of what you need to do. And so this is typically, let's see. Okay, yep. You have LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, I do. It's
Okay.
not very.
Okay, we're going to work on your LinkedIn. But the first thing you're going to do is you're going to read the articles on landing a job in 7 steps. So you're going to read these articles, which I'll highlight for you in yellow. So you'll just go into the doc, click the link, read it, take notes and questions. Like, here's what I liked, here's what I disliked. Look through my long list and see if there's anything in there that you want to keep, or start making your own long list. And then we are not going to read the other steps yet. Okay. So you're just going to read the articles. You're going to start working on your LinkedIn. You can start going through your network and looking at people who you know. And that's what you want to do, is find people at companies that are interesting.
Yeah.
So that's kind of this is your first session assignments, which are right here. We can make them do next week. I've seen people, it take 1 week for them to do it. I've seen it take 2, and neither are bad. The more important thing is you do every step that we assign, not rush yourself through it, because the foundation we're building will make you super successful. So questions about what we just went through?
Sure. I think a big question that I had is, what would you consider my network? Like, that's what I've always been weary. Like, how well do I have to know somebody to reach out to them? You know what I mean?
So there's multiple levels in a network, and so I actually create groups of my LinkedIn. But the people whose cell phones I have, who I could call, set up a coffee, or go do if anybody would answer a text from me, you could connect with them on LinkedIn. So you start there. You're like, if I look through my phone, I have these people's cell phones, I'm going to connect with all those people on LinkedIn. That's usually where I have people who don't have big LinkedIn presences start. And then what you start doing from there is, once you get connected to somebody, like you get introduced via network, you can do a connection on LinkedIn and you can do fun follow-ups with them. And then there's this third level, which is like anybody and everybody that can connect with you, like a Facebook profile. I really. Oh, say that again.
Like somebody that went to University of Utah. Yeah, I could connect with them on that level. Something
yes.
Like yeah.
Or anyone who played golf with you or is an alumni of the golf program. That's a good connection.
Yeah, that's true.
So, like, you think of these groups. Oh, Antioch. Yes, these people I can connect with. People from your old companies. When I join a company, everyone I meet face to face, I connect on LinkedIn immediately. And the reason I do that is I'm just trying to build awareness of myself in the company, but of who my resources are and who they are. And that way, when I meet with them, I'm like, oh, I already know who they are. Okay, that's Mike. He sits over there. Like, because the game in work isn't just work. There's a lot of things going into knowing people by name and calling them by name and working with them by name and knowing more people than they know you, and trying to be very vocal and present and engaged and raising your hand and all that good stuff that goes along with it. So yes, that would be network. If you ever have a question, you can text me and be like, hey, here's how I know this person. Should I add them? My inclination is yes, but just make sure you can write something custom. Congratulations on having the baby, praying for you guys. Like, if you can do that stuff, connect.
Yeah.
Friends from high school, unless they work at companies you find really interesting, you can connect with them, or you can't. It doesn't really matter. you just sometimes want to be careful what you fill your LinkedIn with, because your intent is to, how can I help? And if it's someone that you're unwilling to help, like if you're not going to pour it back into them, maybe don't spend a lot of energy connecting with them.
Yeah.
Because ultimately this pool of people you will tap into 1/10 the amount of time you pour into.
Yeah.
So what you have right now is you may not have skills to like consult them on something, but you may have time. And you're like, hey, I saw you were shopping for this. Do you need someone to go pick something up at the store for you? Like little things like that. Like that's what you do early on in your career. And you're like, hey, I see you're working on a house. Do you need help moving sod? Like that's pouring into your network. And then what happens is you get skills to where I do more of this than I do moving sod now. I do both, but I definitely do a lot more of this type of stuff in my network than I do other.
Yeah. It's a good mindset shift for me in terms of networking, because I've always looked at it like, hey, can you get? I mean, I haven't looked at it this way. I really haven't been good at networking at all, because I've been viewing it as asking for favors rather than like connecting with people and helping them out.
Yep.
So that's really good. Yeah, that's actually an awesome tidbit right there.
Yeah, and authentically, genuinely caring about people. That's networking. Yeah. Like it's just sometimes it like there's a guy I did a call with yesterday, and him and I have never gotten along in work, but I had a post on LinkedIn and his CEO was the guy I responded to, and then he sent it to all his executives. I'm like, oh no, did I just stir up the pot with this executive team when my intent was not to do that? And me and him, I know we butt heads. And so I called him and I just said, number one, I apologize if this caused any strife for you. Two, how are you? And we talked for 20 minutes. And it's because I'm not trying to be inauthentic. I'm trying to make sure he knows my intent is never to be negative or shoot down him. I'm like, if you're on a different side of this, I said my ideas were 2 cents. I clarified that with the CEO. But that, I think that speaks volumes to the kind of character. I want to have that level of character with people, regardless if I like you or not. Like, I know how I want to be treated. And so here's how I'm going to go. I'm going to treat you with respect, honor. Here's my intent. I'm a fan of your success. It doesn't mean I want to work with you. I want everyone to be successful though. Like I don't want people to not be successful unless they're super unethical. But just because we disagree on things doesn't mean I want them to fail. So yeah, that's the fun. So you have my expectation is you'll go into the doc, your assignments are in there. As you're banging through them, you can add a comment. So you can just right click it and go add comment and be like, Doug, I finished this. Here's the things I want to talk about. So that you're like kind of getting your thoughts in order. So when we get together, these times are pretty productive.
I think one of my concerns is, and I'd like to get your take on it. I think, I mean, this isn't me being negative, but I always question like my success, I suppose. Like I think it's extremely difficult for me to even talk about experiences that I've had in the workplace to like quantifiably, like, you know what I mean? It's hard for me to quantify, like, here's how I've had results. Here's how I've added value to a company. I've had such few roles and in such few like positions that I've been put in a place where I like have, results that I can look at, that I can go back to. I know there's a way that you can talk positively about every experience. It's just hard to quantify, like I said.
Yeah. So sometimes it's trying to figure out what you're doing that someone's not measuring that you could measure. So like, for instance, I used to work in a member services role and nobody there ever measured their reporting. Like they just answered phones, answered emails, and we had to pick up the phone, we had to answer emails, and we had to do these other 2 tasks. And what I did is I put a Google Sheet in front of me, a piece of paper, and every call I did, I would take a single tick mark. And then I would translate that activity into an Excel sheet at the end of the day. and I would track my metrics over the months and weeks. And the reason I did it is if my manager's not going to quantify my success, I'm going to do it. Right? Like, and so it's a mind shift in what you're doing with Nate. If you're like doing number of records, you're like, if I can do 1,000 an hour or whatever it is, measure that and quantify it, because you could go, hey, I successfully added these many contacts to his database. But the thing you could ask Nate on the back end is, hey, how much revenue did this equal? And get that from him and go, I just want to update my resume. So I want to know the output of this. Like, to what end does my work impact the bigger story? And then you can start going, well, if I can give you 100, what if I give you 1,000? Would that exponentially grow?
Yeah.
So then Nate starts getting really excited because he's working with somebody that's like thinking about the output of what they're doing outside of the task.
Yeah. That's good. That's really good. I've never asked those sort of questions at all. So that's great.
Yeah. And it's new, right? Like everyone I've talked to and worked with on this, you're saying nothing different than the other 20 people. So I want to give you confidence that I've felt the same, been through the same. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, but I've just figured out the game a little bit because I've had time to figure out the game. And the game of business and the game of work is not taught to you in college. You get a syllabus, and work doesn't give you a syllabus. There's no syllabus to your career.
Yeah.
So hence we help each other. Hopefully people with more experience than us are dragging us along, helping us learn quicker than they did. And then also at some point you can pour into younger people and friends and colleagues and up even into me and I'm gaining and gleaning and making sure I stay passionate and all that good stuff. So, okay. So I'm going to hit stop recording. I'll forward you